So you probably remember that little poem called Footprints in the Sand. You know, the one that tells the story of a man who has a dream that he saw his life in terms of walking with God along the beach. And there were two sets of footprints in the sand. One was his and the other's was God's. And then he noticed that during the most challenging times of his life, there was just one set of footprints. So he asked God about it, and God tenderly told him that those were the times that God carried him. You remember that poem, don't you? It's probably hanging in your grandmother's bathroom somewhere. If it's hanging in your bathroom, I'm sorry to make fun of you that way. You know, the first time you read it, you probably thought, oh, that's pretty sweet. And then the second time you read it, you're like, that's okay. By the third or fourth time you've read it, you're ready to not hear it again. Well, somebody finally came up with a renewed, a refreshed version of that poem. And I thought I would share it with you this morning. Now, I'm not a very big poetry reader, but I'll do my best. One night I had a wondrous dream. One set of footprints there were seen, the footprints of my precious Lord, but mine were not along the shore. But then some stranger prints appeared. When I asked the Lord, what have we here? Those prints are large and round and neat, but Lord, they're too big for feet. My child, he said in somber tones, for miles I carried you alone. I challenged you to walk in faith, but you refused and made me wait. You disobeyed, you would not grow. The walk of faith you would not know. So I got tired, I got fed up, and there I dropped you on your butt. Because in life there comes a time when one must fight and one must climb, when one must rise or take a stand or leave their butt prints in the sand. Now, what if that version is actually more accurate than the original version? Today, we actually finish up this Purpose Sermon series. And I knew from the very beginning that I was looking at this series exactly how I wanted to end it. And I wanted to end it by looking at a single person's life, a person who lived their life on purpose, not to be self-fulfilled, not to be self-satisfied, but to make history with their life. And ultimately, that's what everything that we've been talking about in this series, how to make history with your life. How to make history with the one and only life that you've been given. The history that God wanted us to make when he willed us into existence. When he made us so uniquely, when he gifted us and gave us passions and a personality and a set of life experiences. And he laid out a sense of mission for us through our vocation and the power of this church. And he's made his will known to each of us. Because that's God's ultimate design for your life. For you to seek God's kingdom. Which means to devote yourself to what God wants. To devote yourself to what God cares about and what matters most to the heart of God. To find out what God is doing and then to willingly join him in what he is doing. To bring your life into alignment with his agenda. And then to make his agenda your agenda. And that agenda is clear. First and foremost, it is about reaching a lost and dying world with the one and only message that can transform someone's life. It's a mission that's so clear it's been given its own name, the Great Commission. You see, a real Christian is always a revolutionary. A real Christian is always a radical. They're always dangerous in the best sense of the word. To understand what that looks like, I want to take a look at what has to be one of the most stirring events in the Bible. And it revolves around a single person's life. A young woman by the name of Esther. You see, Esther was a Jewish woman living in Persia. She was a descendant of those Jews who had been carried away in exile by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Not only that, she was also an orphan. Her parents died when she was just a child, and she ended up being raised by an older cousin by the name of Mordecai, who was a very good and godly man. He loved and cared for Esther and raised her as he would if she was his own daughter. She grew to be a beautiful woman, both inside and out. In fact, she was so physically beautiful that when the king of Persia searched for a wife, no one was found to be more fair or more desirable than Esther. Whatever beauty contest they ran back in Persia, she won it. So she was selected to be the queen. Though no one in the king's palace suspected that she was a Jew, because Mordecai had warned her to keep her nationality a secret. But there is also an evil man called Haman who appeared on the scene, and he was able to gain the king's confidence. He had such a high position in the government that the king commanded that all of the royal officials were required to bow down when Haman traveled by. And everyone obeyed that command except for one guy, Mordecai. And this infuriated Haman. It insulted his pride, which led him to devise a plot to not only kill Mordecai, but to wipe out the entire Jewish race. So he started a campaign to deceive the king into believing all kinds of horrible things about the Jews. He convinced him that the Jews were subversive, that they were undermining, that they were revolutionary, that they blamed all types of crime on them. And once he had the king worked up, he then convinced the king to pass a law which would reward anyone who killed a Jewish person, would reward them with money. You see, Haman knew that if people would be financially rewarded for killing a Jewish person, and if the king would sign off on it so there wouldn't be any ramifications, they wouldn't get into any trouble for it, then it wouldn't be long before all of the Jews would be hunted down and killed. You see, before Hitler, there was Haman. With all of that in mind, let's see what happens next and discover how Esther, how her life can teach us about making a difference with our own lives. We're going to begin reading her story in the book named after her, and we're going to look at chapter 4, where it says this: when Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes. He went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly, but he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes, When Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned, looked this up last night, I gotta figure out how to pronounce this word. It is Hathach. Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and explain to her. And he told him to urge her to go into the king's presence, to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. You see, let me stop there for a second, because when you want to know the key to making history in your life, we just saw the first key. The first key is an opportunity. Esther suddenly found herself not only in a unique position of influence, but also with a unique situation that allowed her to make a difference. And Mordecai said to her, "Rise to this. Seize the opportunity." And she's not alone. At various points and times in your life, you will have countless opportunities presented to you to do something significant in this world with your life. God will inject moments into the ebb and flow of your life to do something special for Him, something life-changing. Moments in time that are divine in nature, supernatural in potential, and eternal in significance. The Bible even has a word for these times. They're called a kairos moment. You see, this idea is often lost in our world, because in the ancient Greek language, there were actually two words for the word that we say time. You have chronos, where we get the word chronological. That means a calendar time, days, weeks, months, years. But then they also had a second word, kairos. It's a word that meant specifically something different, something deeper. And in fact, we don't even have an English equivalent to this word. Kairos has to do with the quality of the time. It's a moment pregnant with eternal significance and possibility. It's a moment when we are confronted with a choice or a decision or a potential action that holds the deepest level of significance for who we are becoming, and what impact our life will have. You see, that sense of time is filled with opportunity, and it runs deep through the Bible. For example, when the prophet Jeremiah talked about the life of the great Pharaoh of Egypt, he spoke of him as being a king who was only a loud noise, all talk and nothing else, because he had missed his kairos moment. He'd missed his moment. And then there's a scene towards the end of Jesus' life where he comes to a ridge overlooking the city of Jerusalem. And the Bible tells us it's at that moment that he breaks down weeping. He weeps over the people and the lives that they are living. It's because he recognized that they did not see their moment. They did not accept the time of God's coming. In many ways, your entire life on this planet is a great big Kairos moment. The question is, will you see the opportunity that God brings your way to make a difference in this world? If we're honest, most people don't. Most people never seize the opportunity. They don't live their life thinking about it. Our life in scope of eternity is just a fleeting moment. Anyone with any sense would live their life in light of eternity, but we don't. We make the fleeting moment of our individual life everything. So as a result, we lead fleeting lives with fleeting attitudes, with fleeting goals, and fleeting priorities. And as a result, we barely ever make a difference. You see, the Kairos moment for Esther was clear. She was asked to use her influence and her position to respond to the potential annihilation of the Jewish race. You would think that whenever God would present an opportunity about something so significant as that the answer would automatically be yes. No questions asked. But it doesn't always work out that way, does it? And there's a reason for that. It's because with every opportunity comes something else, a price tag. Whenever you come face to face with an opportunity, you have to do something significant with your life, you also come face to face with the sacrifice that is involved in doing what you've been asked to do. So first is the opportunity, but then it always will be followed by a cost. And it was no different with Esther. You see, there's just a little rule back in the days of Persia that nobody was allowed to just go see the king. Nobody could just walk in uninvited, especially not a woman in their day, not even if you were the queen. In fact, it wasn't just a little rule, it was a capital offense. Anyone who walked in unannounced, uninvited, it was a death sentence. So do you understand now what Mordecai is asking Esther to do? Essentially, he's telling her, I'm going to send you on a suicide mission. Let's read what it actually says. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that he be put to death. The only exception to this is the king to extend his gold scepter to him and spare his life. But 30 days have passed since I have been called to go to the king. Did you catch that last line? Do you realize, she says, do you realize he's not called me for a month? And I'm his wife. I mean, the translation is there, he's not wanted to sleep with me. He's not wanted to dialogue with me. He's not even wanted to see my face for a month. I have no idea where I stand with him. I have no idea if I've offended him somehow. I have no idea what's going on. Do you hear how Esther is thinking? She's saying, I see the problem. I see the need. I see the opportunity. But there's a staggeringly high cost for me to get involved. I could lose my throne. I could lose my title, my privileges, my money, the prestige, the perks that go with it, but that's not even the half of it. I could lose my life. In fact, the chances are I will. You see, this is the second stage of the journey to making history with your life. The first was that there will be an opportunity. The second is that we have to face the cost of acting on it. Just about everyone who has ever made a decision to give themselves over to God in such a way that will make a difference in this world could tell you of a moment where they came face to face with the cost involved in that decision. At that moment when everything was on the line, and that's why so many people live fleeting lives and never get involved. The opportunity comes, they count the cost, but then they let the cost count them out. They see the price tag, they see the risk, they see the inconvenience, and then they say, I'm not about to do anything that would affect the quality of my life. You want me to take a risk at having less than I have now? You want me to add something else to my schedule? You want me to put my career, my reputation on the line? I don't think so. You want me to bypass building my life, my choices, my time? You want me to build it around something other than just me? What are you thinking? I want to live a life of significance, but not at the cost of the sacrifice. But what if? What if there is no significance apart from sacrifice? Did you catch that? What if there is no significance apart from sacrifice? See, there's an old book, it's actually a biography, titled Borden of Yale. It told of a man by the name of William Borden, who went to Yale University as an undergraduate and afterward became a missionary candidate to China. You see, he was the heir of the Borden dairy estate. He was already a millionaire by the time he graduated high school. So as a graduation gift, they sent him on a trip around the world. As he traveled throughout Asia and the Middle East and Europe, he experienced a growing concern for the hurting and the lost in this world. And he wrote home and he said, I'm going to give my life to prepare for the mission field. And after making that decision, he wrote 2 words in the back of his Bible. Those 2 words were, no reserves. From there, he went to Yale University. In fact, during his first semester as a freshman at Yale, he began a Bible study on campus. And by the end of his freshman year, 150 fellow freshmen had joined the Bible study. By the time he was a senior, 1,000 out of Yale's 1,300 students had joined the Bible study. Beyond the campus, Borden founded Yale Hope Mission to reach out to those living in the streets of New Haven. Yet all of this was in sense of his view to missions. After graduation, he was offered many high-paying jobs, but all of them he declined. It was at this point that he wrote 2 more words in the back of his Bible. This time he wrote the two words, "no retreats." Borden next went to graduate school at Princeton, where he was ordained to the ministry. After he finished his studies, he set sail for China, stopping first in Egypt so that he could learn Arabic. While there in Egypt, he contracted meningitis, and in less than a month, he was dead at the age of 26. Before he died, knowing that the steps of his life were about to end, he pulled out his Bible and he wrote two more words. Beneath no reserves and no retreats, he wrote no regrets. How does a story like that impact you? Do you think of his life as a waste? Do you think of it as a tragedy, like somehow God let him down? Or was that a life truly lived? Let me plant the thought. I think in the great scheme of eternity, in looking at that through eternity's eyes, his life was one of the most significant, one of the most consequential lives ever lived, because he didn't care about his fleeting moment here on earth, except to do whatever he could for Christ. That's a critical life lesson that he can leave with us. That if you lead a safe life, you will never lead a significant life. See, when I first thought about that idea, it kind of hit me right between the eyes, because a safe life, we like safety. We like to live a safe life, but a safe life isn't a significant one. So here you have Esther, given an opportunity, but wrestling with the reality of the sacrifice that's involved. So what happened next? You see, the third great thing that always is presented if your life is to make history. The third great thing is a direct challenge. God will insert a direct challenge following the opportunity and the cost analysis. Here's what we read in Esther. It says, when Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back his answer, "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from some other place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this." Mordecai didn't mince his words, did he? And quite frankly, he shouldn't have. The stakes were high. History was going to be made one way or another. So Mordecai basically got into her face and laid it out for her. He said, "This is your moment. Are you going to do something significant with your life or not? You see, if you don't, God will search the land and he will find someone else who will. But right now, that person could be you, Esther." Do you see the challenge that God brings to a life? Do you see the challenge that God brings to your life? You see, I had a defining moment like this. I had a nice law firm. I had a nice cushy life. I had everything that you could want. But I wasn't complete. You see, I kept feeling God to tell me to plant a church. And I kept making excuses and excuses that I didn't have the time. But I wanted to make a difference for him. And I felt that call to plant a church. But it wasn't just any church. You see, many of you don't know this. I was asked to lead a church plant before Taft. But when I prayed about it, I didn't get the answer to lead that church plant. But when the idea of this church was suggested, I prayed, and God told me to do it. It required sacrifice. It required that direct challenge to me to shut down a law firm, to take a 50% pay cut, to take extra jobs to try and make up for what I lost. But I accepted the challenge. And I remember thinking to myself, that's what I want out of my life. I want to be caught up in the sweep of history, to make a difference, to be at the heart of the struggle between right and wrong, good and evil. See, my heart was almost breaking at the thought of leading a life of insignificance. And I remember thinking, but where can that happen in the real world? How can I be a part of something bigger than just me? And then it struck me. That's what God's invitation is always about. See, there's this galactic struggle going on, and I could be a player on God's team. And it hit me that I could give my life to something that would live on after I was gone, that was bigger than I was, where what I did mattered and could impact history even into eternity. The reality of the spiritual realm, the spiritual war, the struggle for people's souls, the eternal consequences, they were at stake. And it became clear to me that I could give my life to that. I could put myself into the mission and commit to being a player on God's team. So I did. And it changed everything. Nothing in my life has been the same from that day forward. You see, as Mordecai said to Esther, there will be makers of history. God will find people to make a difference in this world. The question is whether it will be you, whether it will be me. That's the challenge. So how did Esther respond to this? Did she hear it and blow it off? Was she temporarily stirred, or was she deeply transformed? Let's read in Esther 4, verse 16, what it says. It says, "Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maids will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it's against the law. And if I perish, I perish." You see, I can barely read those words without getting a chill. You see, when an opportunity from God comes, and the cost is counted, and the challenge is heard, there is just one more key to making history, and that's accepting the challenge. When you will leave a mark for all of heaven to see, when you will make history. She made history. We're still talking about it to this very day. She went to the king trembling, afraid, fully expecting to lose her life. She found out that not only did he not have her killed, but when he found out what was going on, he killed Haman. And then he took Mordecai and elevated him to a place of honor. Haman's place. The Jewish people were saved, a people who would one day produce a man named Jesus, who would become the Savior of the world. Not a bad day's work. So let me ask you today, is there something right now where God has put an opportunity in front of you? Do you know of an opportunity that He has right there, wanting you to accept it? Or maybe you know what the opportunity already is, but you're at that stage of counting the cost. You know the opportunity, but you're a little overwhelmed with the sacrifice that will be involved. You're going back and forth, trying to figure out whether the cost can be met. What challenge is God bringing to you this morning? How are you going to respond to Him? You see, you can become an agent and an instrument in God's great plan. All He wants to know is if you're going to see that opportunity, if you will count the cost of sacrifice, if you will then respond to the challenge, and you will live your life on purpose for Him and make history with your life. Will you? You see, they're going to sing a song here in a moment, and the lyrics, part of the chorus says, "We live for you." If you want to accept that challenge today, if you want to see the opportunity, count the cost, hear the challenge, and accept it, will you come forward today? Whatever that challenge is, will you come forward and accept the challenge like you've never done before? Come and make a commitment to living on purpose for Him and making history with your life.